we've got such a great discussion coming up here, where we're at with physical AI, and I thought, as we discussed a little bit earlier, is how we would level set, kind of put a mark in the floor right here at our first event. Where are we with physical AI? Where are things stand in terms of the future state versus the reality state? What's real versus what the potential is? And Michael, you got chosen.
All right, so I'm Michael Harries. I'm a partner with the Robotics Hub. We're a specialist fund focused on very early stage deep tech robotics and AI companies. The most visible thing we've done so far has been first money into Agility Robotics. So we're very bullish on very selective parts of the humanoid robot space at the moment. It's an extraordinary time. My background, I moved to Silicon Valley from Australia in 2011 to set up the StartX Accelerator at StartX, and it's been amazing seeing the emergence or the re-emergence of AI, which is my formal training, and so more and more in the way of AI, and more in the way of AI touching robotics. So it's just an extraordinary time.
Hi everyone, I'm Divya Raghavan. I'm with Hitachi Ventures. So I actually started my career at StartX, where I led a few product development teams and then led product management at a venture-backed startup, and then transitioned over to the dark side of investing. So up until recently, I was with a fund called NGP Capital, which is a single LP fund backed by Nokia, and now I'm with Hitachi Ventures, which is also a single LP fund. So at Hitachi is one of those names. Once you've heard it, you start seeing it everywhere, starting from your healthcare equipments to your consumer electronics. So we invest in a wide range of things, which includes digital services, which also includes connected industries as well as healthcare and energy. And I think physical AI is a topic that is becoming near and dear to us. We are investors in a company called Archetype AI, which does a lot of foundation models focused on sensor data. So excited to be here and share some interesting.
One second, I gotta ask you.
Yeah.
So I know we're going to talk a lot about physical AI, but my mind is stuck on what was that Citrix product that everyone used and knew? What was the brand name of that?
I think the most famous product was actually go to we had like go to meeting, we had different go to earlier version of.
I was not going to have
Yes. That was probably the most popular product, but actually the core product was the VDI and the virtualization infrastructure.
Bill?
Yeah, hi, my name is Bill Reichert, and I'm a general partner at Pegasus Tech Ventures. Pegasus is a global venture capital firm, over $2 billion of assets under management, investing very broadly across all sectors, but we've done a fair amount of investing in robotics and in related AI software. One of our big robotics investments is SpaceX, if you want to call that a robot. But a number of other robotics, and then in the software and the AI space, we are in OpenAI and Anthropic and XAI. So I started as a serial entrepreneur here in the Valley many years ago, and to the point about the emergence or re-emergence of AI, I did my first AI investment in 1989, and I thought it was too late. I thought I had missed the bubble. In any case, so I've seen a lot of evolution of AI over the years, and we'll be excited to talk with the panel about it.
Bill's green lots, he literally wrote the book on startup investing in the Valley here, and it is actually a great book. And congrats on your fantastic Pegasus event. Was it last week, yeah?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Startup World Cup. Everybody apply next year.
Yeah. Double click on that. Check out the Startup World Cup. I'm sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
All right, I did not work at Citrix. Did not work there.
But did you use GoToMeeting?
I absolutely used GoToMeeting.
Okay,
You can tell by the gray hairs.
We're all
the
bonded.
tech I've been exposed to over the years. So my role these days, I'm the head of AI at StartX, and StartX is the community and the Accelerator program for Stanford affiliated founders. What it means to be the head of AI is my job is to create this gathering place where some of the world's best builders under the banner of AI come together and build these amazing new companies for the future. My history, serial entrepreneur, I've done 5 startups, I've built products used by dozens of millions of folks, been backed by Andreessen, SoftBank, that whole thing. But also along the way, I've been doing diligence from the very early days of my career, originally for corporates, then for VCs, PE firm, family office, that sort of thing. So I've seen deals from both sides of the table, and hopefully the flavor I can bring to this conversation is being that entrepreneur as well as seeing things from the investment side.
And Andrew, can I just double click on your background as well? StartX, for those of you who don't know, is a phenomenal entity. But to geofence a little bit, how much of it is for Stanford alum student versus the
Yes.
I have to ask.
No, it's an awesome.
I mean, I can almost see it, right?
Yeah. So there's different sort of ways to get into StartX. Most of our entrepreneurs have a Stanford affiliation, which means Stanford professors, about 80 tenured professors that have some business that they have spun off from their labs. Stanford student previously, like you have to be full-time on your company to be a part of StartX, so you're not currently a student now, or maybe a postdoc, but we do in very special cases, we make exceptions in exceptional cases. There are what we call visiting founders. So those are founders that didn't necessarily have a Stanford-based education or affiliation, and we do have a small smattering of those in the program as well.
Fantastic. You took the bait. I appreciate that. Michael, you were going to help us sort of frame this up a little bit. Do you mind?
Sure. All right. So well, humanoid robots. Everyone's aware of humanoid robots at the moment. They seem to be on every single social channel. We're seeing them jumping around and doing all sorts of interesting things. Are we all going to have one in the home next year? No. Yes, I did.
Who expects a humanoid robot under the Christmas tree?
Who thinks that they're going to be in the home the next 5 years?
Yeah.
Right, and there's going to be some, right? We've got the Neo's just been announced.
1X.
Where you have 1X. You put 20K down, you can have one in the home that's going to be remotely operated by someone, somewhere, which is maybe not what we're all expecting from these things. But humanoid robots as a whole is a really interesting, it's a signal for how much we're seeing right now with the new types of dexterity, the new capabilities, the new actuators, all of this sort of really forward-looking robotics alongside AI. Now, how much of it hits the market in that shape is a really interesting question. I'll strongly say there's going to be some parts that do, but you can also see this as the signal that says we're exploring what it means to have general purpose robots that do more than one thing. We're also very beguiled by it. We all love the anthropomorphization. Right, so in the same way that we have difficulty, finding a difference between ChatGPT and our best friend, we ascribe all sorts of capabilities to something that happens to be human shaped. It's extraordinary, and so a large amount of the investment, a lot of the FOMO that we're seeing at the moment, is probably down to some of those sorts of things as well. But there's no doubt that this is real. There's really interesting things happening in the space, and from my point of view, some of this is really pragmatic, right? And so I'm a big fan of Agility Robotics, for example. Now that's a humanoid robot company that was founded off some technical breakthroughs 9 years ago, but from day one was focused on solving a single problem, right? And so I want to, I guess, lay out a framework that says in some cases these are very pragmatic solutions. In other cases we're saying AI, the path to success for these other ones is AI needs to solve everything. We need to have an AGI and that's going to now be able to do all sorts of things and have the social world model, if you like, in order to be able to go into the home in such a way. So it's a really, really interesting time. And it's a fascinating time for this whole physical AI sort of approach.
So Michael, we were having a little chat in the speaker room before about what, from an investor point of view, what makes sense and with regard to this explosion of enthusiasm around humanoid robotics.
Yeah.
And, again, having been around a while, as an investor and an entrepreneur, I'm very worried that we are out over our skis, so to speak, in terms of expectations regarding these humanoid robots. So I love agility. I mean, I love what those guys are doing, but I would not invest in them now, because I think they're way, way overpriced. They got a long way to go before they're going to actually prove or validate that they can earn their way into their valuation. So I have no doubt that humanoid robots are inevitable in the future. Just as, in 2004, we had no doubt that autonomous vehicles were the future. Just as in the 1990s, we had no doubt that voice recognition was the future. But the future, it's the famous saying, it is here, it's just not evenly distributed, right? And so we see these demonstrations of capability that are pretty exciting, but I think, unlike some of the other tech enthusiasts, we overestimate the speed at which we're going to get to where we are promised we're going to get to. And so our approach, our approach is to focus on the software. Our approach is to say, let's not try to engineer everything, the hardware and the software. Let's take proven hardware and let's figure out, can we improve the performance of that hardware with better software? And ultimately, what this whole, physical AI is all about. It's about software. So the robot side is, the hardware side. And so I worry about us being overly enthusiastic about being able to integrate new hardware with software to generate enough earnings fast enough to justify a venture capital investment.
So I'll just really quickly respond to that. I have to respond to that. I think this is a game of specialists, right? So if you are investing in robotics, you should have a background in robotics. You should have a team that understands and can do the deep dive on what that means. You need to understand how to do that pragmatically. You need to understand what are the paths that that company needs to take and what the demonstrated market opportunity is. Right? And so it is there is a level of conviction required, there is a level of education required, and that's why people investing in robotics should be working with specialist investors today. It's not a generalist space, my take. There's lots of differences in how you think about bringing these companies to market compared to a software company, right? And I think software is fantastic. There's really good reasons, really pragmatic reasons to go there. If you're playing on the hardware side, it's just a different game.
Yeah, this almost sounds like an open conversation on the Gartner hype curve, right? So like new tech comes, peak of inflated expectations, the trough of disillusionment, and then eventually we get to like real productive stuff. And so back to your comment about in 2004, your steering wheel is going to disappear from your car, right? Any moment now. Here it is 20 years later, but like what I do have is a car that does driver assistance, okay? And it I didn't really touch the gas or the brake pedal on the way here, like, that's awesome. My steering wheel's still there, I noticed that. And so, like, I think there is this difference between, am I gonna have a robot to fold my laundry next year, next 5 years? Like, I don't know, maybe, because that turns out to be computationally an extremely difficult thing to do, and we don't really have the tech to do it yet from the software perspective. Like, we're getting close, but like, we're not there. And so, like, but could I have something that sort of does a reasonable job and brings me economic value in that 5 years? Like, I'm with you on that. So I think there's like somewhere between like there's this massive opportunity, the whole world's gonna change and we'll all have these, and like little work, like there's probably some reality in the middle, and I think that's where you can build valuable businesses and make great investments and do meaningful things. Like I almost hear like that conversation unfolding.
Yeah, I just want to add to this discussion here. I think a lot of what is being said is around the innovation that's happening, whether it is happening at the software side or on the hardware side, right? But I want to throw in scaling here. So scaling any of your physical AI companies, whether it's robotics or AI, any autonomous systems out there, that's a whole new challenge. the reason software scaled, and today Netflix is, I'm using Netflix as an example, which is able to reach millions of consumers out there, is because they built the software to scale was thought through, and it went through its own evolution. Similarly, I would like to see this whole, what I call as a software for hardware. So how do you scale hardware companies? How do you scale robotics companies? That includes compliance management systems, your process management systems, or requirements management systems. All these have been extremely dated. So we are seeing a new breed of companies tackle this more in the aerospace and defense category. But I would like to start seeing that percolate into more the humanoids or physical AI companies in general.
Well, and that's software, right? I mean, the issue of being able to move to new tasks with even established hardware is ultimately going to be a matter of, can you get the software to ensure, safety and 106 nines of accuracy, and But again, I mean, the challenge in the physical AI world, and I think other panelists touched on this, and David's whole point about perception is that it is the data required to make a model really smart about the physical world is so much harder to acquire, aggregate, use than the data required to make a chatbot, right? I mean, so it's so easy to get massive amounts of consistent, reasonably consistent data to make a chatbot. It's really hard to get the massive amounts of sort of physical world data that you would need to operate autonomously in the physical world. It's taken the autonomous vehicle guys, how many billion miles, right?
Not right there.
I mean, and we're still not quite there, right? And so they got to cook in these models of how the 205 different variables in the universe, from dogs and beach balls and trees and snow and cones, behave. You've got a program, unlike, again, David's point, we all have intuited already that a red cone is very different than a beach ball or a dog, whatever.
Yeah, and maybe to put these conversations in contextual. So, like, why is software better? Because I can update the software 20 times a day. I cannot update an actuator 20 times a day. Or if I'm doing that, I better have lightning speed with a screwdriver. But I think your point about why we've seen these amazing things with generative AI, specifically in LLMs, is exactly right in that it is in terms of difficulty of problem to predict what language, sort of like the next word, right? That we have this huge corpus of data to do that, as opposed to the last speaker sort of talking about to predict as the robots, going through the factory floor, what is actually going to happen next from a physical standpoint is wildly different in terms of not only data accumulation and processing, but there's just way more potential possibilities of what can happen in the physical world versus language and the most likely word I'm going to say next based on the previous.
Andrew, can I ask you though, as we hear things like Amazon having this job cut and at the same time implementing more robotics across the manufacturing floor, I was advising a company that started this thing called Robotics as a service. Are we starting to see that accelerate, or is that somewhat of a misleading indicator?
That's true. I mean, we see companies at StartX building the next generation of robotic lawnmowers and things like that, where it's more of a constrained problem, and especially in a if you have control over a physical warehouse, it's not like the physical world where I walk down the street and I have no control around the environment around me. So those become more constrained problems, and so just from a data load perspective, it's way less complexity, and that's more on the frontier of where the computation can work today. No problem.
So if with my baseball metaphor is bounding, we're in the World Series, right? What inning are we in terms of watching the robotics wave in manufacturing?
The predict the future.
Which game are we in?
Yeah.
Sorry, are we in the 7th game, or what are you?
Here's the thing. I love telling people this, right? AI started in the 1950s. In the 1950s, and there's been this wave after wave of new algorithms, new approaches, and Moore's law, continuing to. So it's sort of like, what does the next generation of tech do? And I think if you went back into each of those previous decades, again, with like the hype curve thing, and you ask people what would happen, like even back in the 50s and 60s, right? It's George Jetson with the whole, maid robot, and so like that was the perception of what was going to happen. Or Hal, and I don't know when that movie came out, 70s, 80s, something like that. But like people had this perception of what the tech would do, and then eventually figure it out. So like, I am not an oracle. I can't really answer that question. I've got a lot of clarity of like sort of the edge of what compute can and can't do now. As we looked at things like generalized intelligence, so like, is it happening in the next decade? Like, it doesn't exist now, that's for sure. And so like, as advancements are made there, like, I think the problem, if you will, and I'll shut up after this, is like, exponential growth is really hard for humans to understand. It's really hard to understand like what it means to have exponential capabilities happen. And so as like GPU and compute, when we got this exponential increase in that capacity, like we sort of blasted through the Turing test, which is like, can a machine actually behave to a point where a human can't figure out it's a machine? We went through that very important milestone and sort of like nobody noticed. And like in the past it was like this impossible thing, right? And so like it's hard
Wait. We've been
Yeah.
working on the Turing test for what, 65 years?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
It's like, right, I mean, you can't say that was particularly exponential.
No, but my point is like when we hit it, I think in advance of when we hit it, people's prediction of how long it would take was not correct in terms of like, is it happening next year? Because
we thought 30 years ago it would happen by 2001, right?
Well,
That was
the scale fall off a bit, right? But I would argue as recently as 5 years ago,
Yeah.
if you said when are we actually gonna have a machine that can fool a human to think it's another human, I don't think the answer for most people would have been 2 years now.
Okay.
Yeah. Or so I believe.
Okay, so to answer the
Yeah.
question, if I may, I think we're in spring training. Okay? We're not at the World Series yet. I mean, at least we've defined the game. We've defined the game, we've trained the players, we've built the diamonds, right? And, we've had practice sessions, and, now let's see where we go, right? But we're not close to the World Series.
It's a game of pragmatism, right? So this is not necessarily how we're going to be World Series everywhere, by any stretch, right? But I don't need to have something that is generally intelligent to go and do work in a warehouse, right? I have AMRs that wander around and do effective things there, right? So this is find the pragmatic task or set of tasks that will work for a given physical AI device, right? And yes, it's software, but it's also hardware. There's lots and lots of really interesting hardware innovation that is necessary. Doesn't spin over nearly as fast. But let me.
No, I was just going to add on. I mean, in your camp, in terms of you need to really focus in terms of the use cases that you want to go after. For example, we invested in this company called Robotics, which is sanding and surface finishing. That's a very, very highly specialized task, and there's a real labor shortage there. And this company built a robot and has been able to successfully commercialize it just because of the fact that they were able to deliver a real ROI. So I would say, as builders, I would encourage you to think about what's that real ROI going to look like, and go after commercialization rather than focus on the general purpose models.
Crack the customer first. Crack the customer first. Know who you're selling to.
And to the economics. So the good news, I'm an enthusiast, guys. Don't take me wrong. I'm an enthusiast. We're investing in this space. But another factor that is there are a whole bunch of tailwinds for this work right now. One of which that doesn't get talked about as much is the dramatic shift in the price of labor for warehouse workers and factory workers, in just the last 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, 5 or 6 years. 6 years ago, Walmart was minimally roboticized. Why? Because humans were cheaper. In the last 6 years, the cost of humans has roughly doubled, if not more than doubled, for Walmart in their distribution centers. All of a sudden, oh my God, the cost of training and replacing and recruiting and managing labor has become dramatically, a 2x all of a sudden, while the cost of robots, has been coming down. And so I do think we're going to see, I'm very optimistic about the robot world in terms of deployment of robots. I think, in addition to the geopolitics and all the other things that have been mentioned, it's a great time to be in the robots business.
Yeah. I want to throw a curveball. He's staying with my baseball metaphor.
It's baseball.
So
It's football
give me-
season. You know?
Well, I only got a few more minutes, and I recognize the diversity and uniqueness of this panel, and I wanted to say for this audience as well, I think there's a lot of interest on the investment side. So if you're looking at a new investment or your most recent investment, what would you be looking for? Or what have you invested in recently and why? You can choose.
Maybe I can set the stage as like, the entrepreneurs trying to suck money out of these guys. I think like a big part of, from the entrepreneur perspective, what you're trying to lay out for the investor is they want a multiple on that invested capital. They have these pesky LPs that want their money back within a certain time frame, right? So you need to think about, okay, can I deliver 100 or 1,000 times X return to these folks in like the 7-8 year mark? Because like that's when it matters. And then really the other piece on top of that is like if there's some semblance of like you can pull that off, it's like what are the risks? What's the likelihood you're going to do that? What's happening in the market? What's happening with competition? Like I think that's a bit of how you need to frame it. And then from that point, like how each of them are sort of thinking about what makes sense to them or where they see market opportunity. Like every investor's got their own belief system. But I think like that's a big part of it from the entrepreneur perspective, is just sort of understanding the contours of what an investor looks like.
You're right, but you don't have a product or a category or something that you're looking for or touching?
Well, we're StartX. We love everything. We're very interested in sort of helping entrepreneurs bring products into the marketplace and like help them be on the right, curve of where venture investment, matches. But we don't like have an opinion about what's going on.
Forget Stanford and StartX. We're talking about you. Go ahead, Bill. You kick it.
Yeah. No, so for entrepreneurs, I mean, what we're looking at is, do you have a new, different angle that is something that we can validate within a due diligence period? So you don't necessarily even have to have revenues yet, but we've got a number of manufacturing, industrial, corporate partners we can throw you at. I know that'd be painful, but and to assess, can you be economic in their application domain? And so back to this, I'm totally in alignment with Michael in terms of pragmatics, right? Can you deliver an application that we know is going to be economic, within a reasonable amount of time, within a reasonable amount of capital? So, the point that Andrew's making about what VCs expect and what our LPs expect.
I'm going to give a very boring answer. So, aside from the area and the domain expertise and that you bring to the table, what I'm excited about, two things. One is, can you operationalize it? Right. So I think just the fact that you come with this domain expertise, you know how to build, but can you scale? Can you set up the right operations? Can you, this is physical operations that you're thinking about, right? And the second thing, of course, which I was hoping was going touched upon, but given that this is an AI investment panel, is the entry valuation. So I just can't wrap my head in terms of around the crazy valuations that these physical AI companies are demanding. That just because of the fact that I haven't seen enough exits or enough multiples being, the exit multiples being healthy there. So
is it different for you to deploy though in this environment then, or are you just being patient? How do you treat this?
I would deploy, but I would just go early.
Yeah.
I'm willing to take the product risk. I'm willing to take the go-to-market risk as far as the product is mitigated. So for me, it comes down to the entry valuation.
Can you give us an example of something you've seen recently or done recently on the investment side?
I've been looking at this whole category of software for hardware. I think that's super interesting. Again, a lot of that is happening in the aerospace and defense areas. That's where I see like the next Atlassian kind of companies could emerge. For that category, I can rationalize, the market opportunity. But again, if you think about who they are selling to, there is a lot of customer costs, or rather, a time constraint. So again, I'm just trying to think about what the market opportunity is, whether it rationalizes to go. But I'm seeing interesting innovations that are happening in the whole software collaboration for hardware development happening.
So I'm looking for surprises. And what I mean by that is there's a bunch of common themes that we get in the venture industry. And those things tend to get overinvested, prices get high, people get very enthusiastic. And there's still always really interesting companies, and for me that means a company that has deep IP, right? So defensible IP, world's best person or top 5 person in the world for that particular area. But where it takes a little bit of time, so we'll work with companies for upwards of 6 months before investing as advisors. Do a deep dive on technology, understand the technology as well, but the science is in. But also validate that there are real customers, real scale opportunities at the far end of that. Because for the deep tech side, I mean, these are longer duration exercises, so they better be big, they better work out pretty well. So we will put the time in to make that happen. So I love the surprises, and I'll come back again. This is about pragmatism. I'm not making any investments unless I'm really, really comfortable that the customers are there, that scale is there, and the proof points are there. So I'll circle back again and say, I agree to disagree with Bill on agility.
But you're all very pragmatic. Hey, do we have any questions? We only have time for really one because, lunch is in the way and stuff, but this is just a all-star panel. It'll give you guys an opportunity.
Sorry, aren't we more nutritious than lunch?
I don't know. I mean,
Sorry. Okay.
question over here, please.
Thanks so much for the amazing panel. The question I have is, first of all, we're a startup, but we're also in the AI space. The software level, what do you see as the future of, for example, AI native PLCs, that whole SCADA area, those ways of actually helping all these devices, whether it's from the IO level, to engage in an agentic way? What do you think the future of that is, and do you think that there'll be a way to upset the Siemens and the NEBs of the world?
And maybe I've taken a look at a few of the AI native PLC companies. I think the biggest challenge is educating the buyer. So there's a buyer and there's a user, right? So the user is used to a certain way of consuming products. There's all these legacy systems that are in there. So you have to kind of change the habit of that user before appealing to the buyer. Right? I think there's a lot of market education that needs to happen. Of course, as from a tech and a product standpoint, you may be ready, but from a market readiness, I do have a lot of questions in terms of how do you educate it, who's going to be the first mover there. So sometimes it's better to be a second mover in this market.
I'd like
First
to
mover would have
let
already done the education there.
Divya, thank you for that. Michael, Bill, Andrew, thank you. This has been a fantastic panel. How about a round of applause? And with that kind of wraps up the first half.